Welcome back to the project. Now, our next guest has been open about his struggles with addiction, and now he wants to help everyone.
A little bit cool, a little bit of a twit, and I sort of think I'm Jesus.
Russell Brand is a self-professed messiah, and from the moment he burst onto stage with that signature hair, he made no secret of his dark
Like the first
past.
time, I slept with a prostitute when I was maybe 16 years old, and I think the girl was probably not much older. You know, she was 17, 18, I don't know, a couple of years older than me. And I loved her. I loved her. She was beautiful and elegant and sort of sweet, and I felt sort of kind of relieved and in awe and frightened of her, and I'd only ever had sex once before in my life, and to be with this sort of beautiful Filipina woman, it was kind of incredible. And one of my great laments about not being gay has been like, oh, it must be bloody good that if you're the person you're having sex with is sort of like you. Like, all right, come on in, mate, let's fucking come as quickly as possible. I'm not actually a libertine type of person. I'm not like, yeah, what's wrong with fucking prostitutes, man, let's go. I think that, like, well, be careful with your soul. Be careful with yourself. What I felt is like that when I've slept with prostitutes when I was young, that a kind of sense of, initially, like, you know, sort of quite shameful, but like sort of beyond that, like, you know, sort of like the famous Jack Nicholson edict: you don't pay them to be there, you pay them to leave. Sure. Often that, like, it is really that sometimes the sex seems like too much of a complicated thing to be doing in almost any other conditions. Right. Like that it is a perfunctory. The reason I won't use drugs today or drink today is because I know I can't manage it.
He struggled with addiction from a young age. Money, sex, food, relationships, drugs and even fame, reaching its heady peak when he was married to Katy Perry.
Dark-sided too! I'm living like this life, the very thing that I detest. Vapid, vacuous celebrity.
While Russell was able to resurrect himself, he carries guilt for not doing more to save his mate Amy Winehouse, who died at just 27 after years of alcohol and drug abuse.
She drank a glass of champagne, then threw it over her shoulder. I got the sense of a ticking clock then and spoke to a few other people about, like, hey, they need to do something.
Now sober for 15 years, he's decided to share the program that's kept him clean.
And that is why I'm a little bit like Jesus.
And here he is now. Would you please welcome Russell Brand? Russell, great to have you on the show again, and this time we're talking about your fourth book. I know in previous books you have written about your addiction and your history with addiction, but can you take us through what it is that you'd been dealing with?
Yes, I'll tell you what it is I've been dealing with. A tumultuous, ever-restless, cosmic force of deranged appetites trying to devour the world, trying to devour the galaxy and its planets, first in the form of drugs, then in the form of sex, sometimes in the form of food. In fact, food preceded even the drugs and sex when I think about the way I set about biscuits as a boy. And in this book, my fourth book, Wally, I talk about how do you tackle that problem and what is this appetite in the first place? What does it want? The appetite that we call addiction, the appetite that we call desire, where is it trying to take us? So that's the project.
Yeah.
Or, this is the project. That's my project.
Now, Russell, you were close friends with Amy Winehouse and said before her passing that you thought her addiction might take her life. How did you feel after her passing, and how did you then reflect on your own addictions after that?
When Amy Winehouse died, I perhaps narcissistically somewhat blamed myself, but there were times with Amy where I talked to her about her addiction, but I feel like she wasn't ready or didn't have the right kind of support. But I know what it's like being around people that are addicts that don't want to stop. You know, it's very, very difficult to intervene.
We seem to glamorise celebrity addiction, Russell. When you're the celebrity, you know, handling this addiction, how hard is it to get straight when the world seems to be almost amused by it?
Well, Pete, there's no doubt that it can be somehow entertaining to watch someone self-destruct. But my celebrity, I think, is irrelevant to my condition, because the hardest time for me was when I wasn't famous, when I had nothing and was a crackhead and a smackhead. That time is incomparably more difficult than being in the public eye and dealing with, you know, issues in relationships or issues around my other behavioural problems. I suppose when we see a public figure self-destruct, it's difficult to think, oh, that person needs a cuddle.
Speaking of cuddling, let's talk about Mabel. How has that changed your life?
It's changed it radically, because
I think it's impossible to preempt what it'll be like to have a baby. That storm of will, that force. It's blowing my mind, really. Like, it's changed everything. I just don't have time to be as narcissistic as I'd like to be now.
Russell, you've been in showbiz for a long time. Do you think it's possible to be in that world and avoid addiction to materialistic things?
I think it is if you live a life predicated on spirituality. It's a challenge, of course, because it does reward particular kinds of behaviours. But I think within any territory, there are things that are truthful and beautiful. Look at us now. We're on this show, and both times I've got, like, last time I came on your show, it was like a mental, crazy laugh.
Yeah.
And this time, it seems we're talking a bit more, you know, spiritually and a bit more maturely. So I think you can find truth anywhere. And you know, like, I still am seduced by it. When I got this jumper, for example, I really felt very comforted by it and very excited, and I looked really cool. But I also know that the jumper is temporary. There'll be a point when something gets spilt on this jumper or I lose this jumper. And if I feel like this jumper can resolve me, make me better, then I'm in a lot of trouble.
Russell, I do blame last time you were on our lack of maturity on Fifi Box, just so you know.
So do I. It's interesting that in the absence of Fifi, we're talking about the nature of reality, and when Fifi is present, we squirt out a fecal-looking moose onto the desk. She is my third favourite Australian. I think my favourite Australian, Ned Kelly. Second favourite, Rod Laver. Number 3 in the Great Australians, Fifi Box.
You really seem to spread your favourite Australians out.
Yeah.
Well, historically.
Historically, yes.
I'm really covering an expanse.
Russell, there'll be a lot of parents watching tonight not sure if their kids are becoming addicted to their screens, to the internet, to their iPads. Have you wrapped your head around our society's addiction to the internet?
I think about it a lot. I think my personal experience is I need to regulate it, because otherwise I will just stare at that little screen looking for comfort hour after hour. And already, let alone adolescent, my child is an infant, and we're bombarding her little mind with In the Night Garden, which I spend much too much time analysing the meaning of Iggle Piggle and what Upsy Daisy's on about, and why you have to panic about the Ninky Nonk. Oh no, it's the Ninky Nonk. So like, why is it a problem? You need it to get from A to B. But I'm digressing. But yeah, I think that for me, that kind of stuff's got to be regulated.
Well, I'll let you get back home to your Ninky Nonks in just a second, Russell. But before I do, are there things that you're struggling with as we speak? Do you still consider yourself an addict?
Yeah, it's a continual struggle, Wally, because I think that the external attachment is, to use an English phrase, a red herring, is bogus. It doesn't matter if you're addicted to sex or drugs or codependent relationships. What matters is there's a yearning within you, and I think it's in all of us, a yearning for connection. And if that yearning is not correctly directed, it will attach like some mad duckling following a tractor to whatever external stimuli is present. And the thing I believe that it's yearning for is a sort of a connection to what some people call God, what other people call nature, what other people call oneness, a sense that our consciousness, yours and mine, and Fifi Box's and Ned Kelly's, is all one thing, experiencing external phenomena.
Well, all your tips are in your new book, Recovery, Freedom from Our Addictions. It is out tomorrow.
You've got it in Australia.
We got it
How
in
has
Australia.
It got there?
It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. We will say hi to Fifi Box for you. Would you please thank Russell Brand?
Thank you. Give her my love. Love to Australia. Thank you.